I was having y'all your boy Rico from RicoScores, and man, that boy Adam Peters is not playing with y'all, boy. The Washington Commanders have just now stolen, just today alone, 3 top executives from the Baltimore Ravens, the Detroit Lions, and them sorry little Atlanta Falcons, man. And I love the fact that one of these hires looks like revenge against Ben Johnson. I love it. Do we have the best front office in the NFL? We're going to dive into everybody that was hired just today. We're going to do individual breakdowns for all 3 hires and why we should be excited about each of them. And then we're going to do like an overall look of what Adam Peters has done up to this point since becoming our general manager. So again, super excited. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned, working on film sessions for the entire draft class. I'm gonna keep y'all updated on all of the OTAs practices, the mandatory minicamp when that comes up, and of course the training camp practices as well. And I'm also gonna update y'all on everything Commanders going on, even outside of practices, like a video like this. So I'm your one-stop shop for everything Commanders. And instead of wasting more of y'all time, let's go ahead and get to this video, man. Again, I'm super excited. Let's get it. Adam. And first of all, you know you're doing something right when the team that somebody you hired is leaving is sick about that person leaving. We are stealing these execs away. I really want to point that out. These are not like formerly fired guys that are just looking to land somewhere. They were already available. All of these hires were guys that we had to take from somewhere else. Like point number 1, they're coming from situations where their previous franchises did not want to lose them. We had to literally take them from those franchises, steal them away, which takes me to point number 2. These guys left great situations that they already had with their previous teams to come here. So this is just further pushing that trend and that pattern that we're seeing this offseason, that a lot of people definitely see a certain vision. They see the light at the end of the tunnel for these Commanders, because most notably like Dave Gardy, he was with the NFL front office. Most people work for NFL teams with the goal of working for the NFL front office and being Roger Goodell's one of his right-hand mans over there. And that guy, Dave Gardy, left that situation to come work for us. It's just continuing the trend that people are jumping ship wherever they are, no matter how good the situation is, to come join us here. And I'm telling you, man, we're really building something sustainable and long-term here, and I'm very excited, and it starts with the front office. Also, shouts out to my boy Mike Hall over there at the Burgundy Zone for this meme right here. And this is exactly what Adam Peters is doing, man. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I love the fact that these people are coming most notably from elite franchises. Now, you know, one guy coming from the Falcons, we'll get there later. Still a great guy, but he's not necessarily coming from a great franchise. But the Detroit Lions and the Ravens, you take one of the main reasons as to why they are as great as they are today from them and bring them to the Commanders. That's a positive. And before we get to the first guy that we're going to talk about, the guy that we took from the Lions, I do want to point out that this has been a very fun and very, very active offseason, man. We've had waves of celebrations too. That's what's been so fun about it. Make sure you like really savor and enjoy this offseason, because hopefully in an ideal world, best case scenario, we're not making all of these hires next offseason or any offseason soon. Hopefully we never have this much turnover again. So make sure you really take the time to sit back and just enjoy how much change is happening here. And also, of course, don't expect for it to ever happen again, because if things are going well, it shouldn't happen again. But I do want to point out the fact that we've had waves of celebration and fun this offseason. I mean, you had the front office back all the way in like January with Ron Rivera being fired, Bob Myers and Rick Spielman coming in to help lead the GM search. Then we hired Adam Peters and had all of those GMs fighting over each other, but we ultimately picked Adam Peters in January. Then we had the coaching staff hires that, you know, started off a little disappointing with the way that the Ben Johnson situation went down, but now looking back, hindsight 2020, this is definitely the best situation we could have had. And then we had free agency where we signed the most free agents out of the entire NFL. Then we had the draft where most experts feel like we killed the draft and had arguably one of the best drafts in the NFL. Some people felt like we had literally the best draft in the NFL. And I know you can't necessarily watch film on these three hires that I'm updating y'all on today, so their value may not be as easy to perceive by us fans compared to other things. Like, you can't just go watch these three guys' highlights like you can do with players. You can't even necessarily like refer to their win-loss records like you can do with the coaches that we brought in. But trust me, you should be just as excited about these three hires that we're going to talk about today as you were about the free agency class and that draft class. Just as excited. These hires are how you become great long term, not necessarily immediately, but long term. And back to my point about being able to easily look up the value that they've had on their respective franchises. Yeah, it may not be easy, but it's not impossible. That's what I'm here for. I got y'all. Let's dive into it. Starting with the Detroit Lions, the Washington Commanders went and hired Brandon Sosna to become our senior vice president of football operations. Sosna will report directly to general manager Adam Peters and be the club's lead contract negotiator and have a significant role in roster construction, CBA, and salary cap. That's our guy that's going to do all of that. Rob Rogers is also still listed on the updated front office roster as the SVP of football administration, and so they basically really do the same thing, but I'm pretty sure at some point Rob Rogers will be sent packing at some point. I'm going to talk about that towards the end of talking about Mr. Sosna. We'll get there later though when we get to Rob Rogers. But coming back to Sosna, shouts out to Resh Manuel for pointing this out as well. Y'all already know how he gets down. Aside from the Newmark connection, because Sosna is coming from the Detroit Lions just like Lance Newmark. We stole both of them in the same offseason. I know Ben Johnson's sick, man, but there's also a small random connection to Adam Peters as well. Sosna reported to Lions COO Mike Disner, and Disner and Peters were together in the New England Patriots scouting department. So it's like a really random by way of somebody else connection, but there's still a slight connection to Adam Peters there. And then Adam Schefter even talked about this. That's how big this hire is. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and let you know now, I don't believe Adam Schefter talked about any of the other two hires we're talking about today. So that kind of lets you know like the order of importance, the order of how excited we should be, because Adam Schefter only talked about and tweeted about this Sosna hire because it's that big. This is like national news, NFL news that every fan base should know about, because watch out, the Commanders are not playing type of news with this one. The other two guys are great as well. Again, we're going to dive into those, but I wanted to start off with Sosna because this is by far the biggest hire that we're talking about today. Again, to the point that even Adam Schefter only talked about this hire. Reporting to general manager Adam Peters, Brandon Sosna will be the club's lead contract negotiator. He will oversee a number of football operations departments, including analytics, health, and performance and football administration. He will also play a major role in strategy around roster construction and the salary cap and the CBA, like I already previously mentioned. Then you also have my boy Mason Kinahan on Twitter. Make sure you follow him. He does a lot of great articles breaking down a lot of Commanders things, doing film sessions. He does draft big boards, all of that type of stuff. And he did Brandon Sosna's resume. Lions Senior Director of Football Administration from 2022 to 2023, USC Chief of Staff 2019 through 2021, and then Brown Salary Cap and Contract Analyst in 2018. He is only 31 years old, y'all. So if you're thinking about back to his time with the Lions, just where he just left, back in 2022 when he first got there to be their Senior Director of Football Administration, that man was only 29 years old when he took that job. He is now only 31 years old, and he's about to be our Senior Vice President of Football Operations, and he's going to completely control cap, all of that type of stuff. This is ridiculous, and I really want to emphasize how crazy 31 years old is, y'all. Like, people have been hoping for the Commanders to find like the next Sean McVay as like a head coach or an offensive coordinator. But how about the Sean McVay of front office roles? How about that? Because Sosna is not the only young and up-and-comer that they've hired this offseason, especially in the front office and the coaching staff and things like that. But he's probably the most notable because 31 years old is truly insane. Like, the resume he already has at that age is wild. Again, he's literally, to me, the Sean McVay of like cap space management and contract negotiations and things like that. Best way to put it. Like, if the Commanders are forming the Avengers as far as like putting together this front office and coaching staff, like the people that don't play on the field, Sosna would be your Spider-Man, like the young up and coming prodigy with infinite potential type of guy. And again, he may not necessarily be a coach, he may not even necessarily be a GM, but I'm telling you, you're gonna feel his impact. We're gonna get there soon. Also, just to let you know, we interviewed Jake Rosenberg of the Eagles for the same role and chose Sosna over him. And a lot of people love Jake Rosenberg. Let me let you know this now. That would have been a great get. If Sosna didn't exist, Jake Rosenberg, we would be pretty much just as happy about getting him for that role. So just like the general manager search, where we really couldn't miss once we narrowed it down to a select few top candidates, this is kind of like the same situation. And another parallel is that, just like with us picking Adam Peters over the other top GM candidates, and that was the best choice to go with, same thing just happened with us picking Sosna. Because I want to point out the fact that Jake Rosenberg, do not sleep on him. He has done great things for the Eagles with their contract negotiations, the way that they set them up to finesse it. I know everybody has been begging, how are the Eagles getting away with this? How do they already have all of these stars and still finding a way to trade for AJ Brown, to sign more Pro Bowlers to their team? Is cap space a myth and things like that? Well, that was the guy that was doing all of the finessing for that, right? And we chose Sosna over that guy, to put it simply. That's the best way I could word it for you as to why you should be excited about this hire. Also, going to the article that Nikki Javala wrote from the Washington Post, she said, much like he did in previous roles with the Lions and at the University of Southern California, Sosna will also help with the Commanders' broader strategy in building the roster, managing the salary cap, and adhering to collective bargaining agreements. That's what the CBA stands for, just to let y'all know. Before his 2 years in Detroit, Sosna spent 3 years as the executive senior associate athletic director / chief of staff at USC, managing the daily operations of the athletics program and overseeing its external communications, revenue generating teams, and serving as the department's lead contract negotiator. I mean, this guy doesn't even just do one thing. He's doing multiple things, all in back when he was with USC, a 27-year-old body. That's insane. Like, all of those roles and responsibilities attached to one person, and he's that young, shows you that he's literally like the Bobby Slowick or the Ben Johnson, what people thought of those guys as offensive coordinators. He's that, but of the front office. Again, like the Sean McVay of front offices. Brandon was a key addition to the Detroit general manager Brad Holmes' staff in 2022 and played a vital role in assisting the Lions in their roster construction these past 2 seasons. His expertise on the salary cap and in contract negotiations, along with his well-rounded skill set developed through his unique career across the NFL and collegiate athletics, which makes him a great fit for any front office, but especially the front office that we're building here for the Washington Commanders. And also, with him reporting directly to GM Adam Peters and based off of the assigned responsibility and role that he'll have on this team, it sounds like this guy may be even higher up on the pecking order than a Lance Newmark. Like, he may be more pivotal to our success than Lance Newmark is, and Lance Newmark is our assistant GM. He's literally Adam Peters' right-hand man. Adam Peters is the general manager. Lance Newmark is the assistant general manager. But it sounds like Sosna is going to have so much on his plate. He's going to have so many responsibilities and so many tasks that it sounds like he may actually be more important than Lance Newmark, which is actually really crazy. Also, just to let you know, shouts out to Resh Manuel for pointing this out. If you're wondering, if you're trying to get a good idea of how Sosna is going to affect the Commanders, what type of role he's going to have, a good way to put it is also Parag Marathe. I hope that's how you pronounce it, of the 49ers. That's who Sosna is going to be for the Commanders as a comparison, is a good way to put it. And I know Adam Peters was looking for basically his version of that, and he went and took that from the Lions, took that from Ben Johnson. He took Lance Newmark and Brandon Sosna from Ben Johnson. Yeah, you're there. You stayed there. Now good luck trying to go right back to where you were. Good luck trying to replicate that success that you had last year without some of the top guys that helped you get to where you are. Also, you know you're doing something right when Eagles fans are sick. I saw a tweet from an Eagles fan named Angelo Fiumara. I hope that's how you pronounce that name. And he said, as an Eagles fan and not a fan of Joshua Harris at all, I still have to admit it appears the Commanders are making excellent moves this off season. I mean, and of course, with him being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, the reason he pointed out Josh Harris is because Josh Harris does own a couple of Philadelphia franchises. He just only owns the Commanders when it comes to football, but of course, he owns the hockey team and the basketball team professionally for the city of Philadelphia. So that's why this Eagles fan is like, yeah, I already know about Josh Harris, and I may not necessarily be a fan of Josh Harris, even though me as a Rico of Street Scores, I love Josh Harris. I feel like we couldn't have done any better, especially now looking back, hindsight is 2020. But this guy who doesn't like Josh Harris even has to admit, as an Eagles fan, that we are killing it this offseason, is my point. Also, Lions general manager Brad Holmes back in March talked about Brandon Sosna. He said, quote, "It's a year-round collaborative approach. It really is. We start on this during the season in terms of planning and our process for free agency, but me and Sosna, we work side by side with the communication, the players that we're looking to acquire at all levels, starter level and backup level guys. We talk about there's a plan A, there's a plan B, and a plan C, and it's just consistent communication." And that's the great thing about Brandon. He's about as elite of a communicator as I've ever been around, and he's a grinder. He's a grinder just like I am, just like a lot of the guys in our building. Is just that communication, collaboration year round, where it's at the point Brandon almost pretty much has a very good feel of what we're thinking already. He's very proactive in that sense. That's pretty much how it works. That's how me and Sosna communicate, and then he just kind of closes the deals. Unquote. That's coming from GM Brad Holmes of the Lions himself. And again, poor Brad Holmes. I mean, you got to feel for him. But Ben Johnson started it, so get mad at him, if anything, not us. We just retaliated. But he just went from having Lance Newmark and Sosna in this corner to now having neither going into this next season. The Lions, you know, shocked the world last year with a lot of the success that they had. Good luck trying to replicate that without two of your top personnel decision guys right there. Also, shouts out to George Carmi for pointing this out as well. Detroit Lions fans also seem very disappointed about his departure because apparently he had a hand in the long-term deals with Penei Sewell, Jared Goff, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So at least he left them a parting gift with Jared Goff's contract before he left. But hey, man, as Lions fans, I understand that y'all do. It has to hurt to lose somebody this important and this vital to your success. We'll see if they can go into 2024 and do the same thing, but it's going to be really hard, especially long term. It may not necessarily affect them immediately this season, but long term, losing a guy like that does hurt. And the Detroit Lions podcast with a few Lions reporters on there and analysts even talked about how much of an impact that Sosna had on the Lions the past couple of years that he's been there. They even pointed out the fact that a lot of the contract finesses and loopholes that the Lions have taken advantage of, or in all of the way that they have these elite contract structures, basically really all started to happen once Sosna showed up. Like, they basically were putting two and two together. Like, they were basically saying, like, you notice that when Sosna got here, suddenly we just started having some of the best contracts in the NFL, basically. And they were even laughing about how they really don't want to lose him to another team. And they didn't even necessarily see this coming. This podcast happened a while ago. And then the Lions will lose a big part of their success if he does end up leaving. But they were kind of like, don't jinx it, don't jinx it. And then now, you know, going to the future, he did end up leaving. But, I mean, their whole podcast, they were talking about even like the Marcus Davenport's contract and question how it's even possible for Marcus to be getting that much money on his end, and yet the Lions are only liable for such a small portion of it against their cap space. Sosna is one of, if not the best at getting the best of both worlds, where the players get paid, they're happy, but the teams are also happy because they don't have to eat up much cap space to do it. So he's somehow beating the salary cap system. He's always one step ahead of the NFL. Don't know how. The podcast guys even said that they tried and tried again to try to research Marcus Davenport's contract and even asked a lot of people around the organization about it and have yet to get back any explanation as to how this is possible, how Sosna is doing this. So this man Sosna apparently has some secrets in his bag that he refuses to let slip out, and I love it that way. I mean, I'm even sitting here hoping that he didn't even pass his knowledge to anybody else in the Lions organization, any of the other executives. I hope when Sosna leaves, the contract finessing goes with them as well. I'm hoping he didn't let anybody in the organization cheat off his answers, like elbows up and everything. Like, you not about to cheat off my test. Y'all not about to learn how I do this. You're not about to drive down my value by me having these trade secrets to what I do, and then when I leave, somebody else can do it. Now my value is devalued. Like my value has decreased, has diminished, because there's somebody else out there that can do it. But if I'm the only one that can do this, if I have a monopoly on contract finessing to the level that I am, he's just extremely valuable. So I'm hoping, and it seems like, again, according to those Detroit Lions reporters, that nobody really has an answer as to how he's doing this. It sounds like he kept all of that a secret, and he basically gave them one last gift on the way out. Here's Jared Goff's contract. Thank you. You're welcome. Now I'm about to go do all of that for the Commanders. Y'all figure out how I did it on your own, but I'm not about to help y'all. I love it. And it also, I mean, I know the Detroit Lions, especially Ben Johnson. I mean, he's got to feel a little crazy after canceling on Adam Peters mid-flight like that, because now your top execs just got taken away from you, and Lance Newmark and Brandon Sosna. And Lance Newmark was huge with our draft process, as far as like when we went to the combine, as far as like, you know, we're looking for these certain traits. So make sure you, when you're watching these guys at the combine, when you're watching tape on these guys on your own or at the facilities, make sure you're looking for these traits most importantly, and then make sure you grade them based on those traits. Like Lance Newmark was huge on the process of evaluating players going into that draft, which led to the ridiculously elite draft that we ended up having, according to most people. Not everybody feels the same, of course. I feel like Commanders fans are lower on our draft than most other fan bases and experts and national media members, which is actually crazy. Lance Newmark played a huge role into that. He was like basically the process guy. How do we go about this the best possible way to maximize our time and efforts to make sure we get as much done with a value, because it's hundreds of players that you have to evaluate, hundreds on top of hundreds. How do you go about it the best way to where we can make sure we don't miss a single thing? We evaluate everybody to a T. And then now you have Brandon Sosna, who's the contract finesser of the NFL. I mean, Ben Johnson, you shouldn't have started it. Don't start no 1B none, boy. I'm telling you that you did it to yourself. And also, before we leave and move on from this Lions part, even though Rob Rogers has not officially been let go again, like I talked about earlier, I feel like it's only a matter of time, because like they literally do the same thing. And it's crazy because I was just thinking this a few weeks ago, and I even said it in one of my videos like a week or two ago, that if Adam Peters is completely cleaning house like the way he is right now and the way he seems to be, this was again weeks ago, then did that mean that Rob Rogers would be safe? He wouldn't be safe too, because but I dismissed it in my video, because I said, you know what, maybe he will be safe because Rob Rogers has done a pretty good job. And my whole logic was, why Fix was not broken, really. Even though he was like a Rivera era type of guy, he was one of the very few bright spots from it. And I could see where Adam Peters wants to, you know, get rid of all of the bad from the Rivera era, but maybe at least keep some of the good. You know, that's what I was telling myself. But again, why Fix was not broken? Well, now we have our answer. You only Fix was not broken when you can go and get arguably the best guy in the NFL at what that role is, which was not broken when Rob Rogers was here. Rob Rogers was good, but now we are elite, or if anything, the best. We have the guy that's the best at what Rob Rogers did. He was one of the very few bright spots from the Rivera era as far as coaches and front office guys go, but somehow we still found an upgrade even over him. Now moving on to the Ravens, we have David Blackburn pulling up as well. He's expected to join the Commanders as the director of player personnel. I'm super excited about this, man. Now, technically, I don't think we have like the official deal finalized yet. This was as of like 11 a.m., but it's 3 p.m. Maybe it's already finalized by now. But just to let you know, David Blackburn is the latest impressive addition to the Commanders front office, a 2021 BART list honoree. Blackburn spent 17 seasons in the highly regarded Ravens front office, elite front office. I mean, if you stick around there for 17 years, you must be doing something right, because those guys have been consistently good to great pretty much my whole lifetime. And then he was also the director of college scouting last year for them in 2023. And just to let you know, when it comes to that BART list, Blackburn was among the 10 best scouts in the AFC last year, as voted on by his peers, by other front office executives and scouts and guys like that. His peers voted him to being one of the 10 best scouts out of the entire AFC, and that's why he was in the BART list polling. Also, again, he's been with the Ravens for 17 years, having started there as a player personnel assistant in 2007. He later spent 7 years as the West Coast area scout before being promoted to the national scout for 2 years before his current role that he had last year in 2023. Late last year, he participated in the NFL's front office and general manager accelerator program, aiming to build the league's pipeline of minority talent. So shouts out to him. Shouts out to the NFL for even having that initiative. Thank you. And then I have some interesting philosophies in the way that he views like the draft and how, you know, certain which you need to prioritize in certain positions, because David Blackburn at some point last year gave a good perspective as to how like the change in evaluating wide receivers is similar to a shift that we've seen in the NBA right now. He had his philosophy that ultimately led to the Ravens to taking Zay Flowers in the first round of the 2023 draft. He said, quote, "What makes Flowers unique is even though he's a shorter guy, he doesn't play small. He plays physical. He can go up and tack at the high point, and he can play through contact. He can also break tackles. And the thing that separates him, and again, you can include Steve Smith in this category especially, is that the guys that are smaller, that are number ones or big time playmakers have that mentality. They have that playmaker mentality, that dog mentality, and how we describe it, that Raven mentality. He's going to come over here and he's going to start saying that commander mentality. Can't wait to hear it. Where I want the ball, I want to make plays, and I'm that guy, because they've been doing it all their lives, and you can't fake that. You can't manufacture that. You can't teach that." And that's the end of the quote. The Ravens ended up drafting Zay Flowers last year, and he ended up having the third most productive rookie season in the entire wide receiver class, despite only being 5'9", 182 pounds. And then as far as connections to the Commanders, I mean, literally the only one he may have is Q Blue Kelly, who is like a super backup depth type of guy in the DB room. And the reason that he really likes Q Blue Kelly is because they ended up drafting him in the 5th round of the 2023 draft, but he ended up getting waived before the season even started, I believe. That's how we ended up getting him. We picked him up off of waivers. But the whole reason he really liked Q Blue Kelly, because he watched his 2021 game against Drake London, and it said that it had a lasting impression on him. He said, quote, "He basically went toe-to-toe with a future top 10 pick and more than held his own," unquote. So he's going to come in here and probably try to get some life out of Q Blue Kelly, a guy that most Commanders fans, even I can admit, sometimes I forget he's even on the roster. But this guy that we just brought in is going to be very high on him, and I'm pretty sure he's going to bang the table for him to get as many opportunities as he can. But it just gives you, I'm just giving you those quotes, especially the Zay Flowers one, kind of to get into the mind of who we just hired, basically. This is a guy that's always willing to go the unwalked, the unbeaten path, to like, I know this is right. I don't care what the general public thinks. I feel like this is the best trait we need to look for in a certain position, and that's what we're gonna go get, and then we're gonna have the results to prove it. And one more thing, when Joe Ortiz left the Ravens to become the Chargers GM back in January, it's crazy because a lot of people were saying, well, at least the Ravens still have David Blackburn to kill it in the draft. About that, you know what I'm saying? So just to kind of give you another perspective as to how big this hire could potentially be for the Commanders, a lot of people, even like especially Ravens fans and Ravens reporters and writers and things like that, were like, yeah, we lost Joe Ortiz, but at least we still have David Blackburn. No longer. I love that, man. Shouts out to the Commanders for swooping in and stealing that one away. The when in doubt guy, the just in case we still got this guy, we took that away from him. And I'm not expecting the Ravens to fall off like the face of the earth and just suddenly become bad, but it's great to bring in guys that are helping these elite teams become the elite teams that they are. And y'all already know, before we move on to the Falcons guy, y'all already know I love bringing over anybody that had any control over who the Ravens were bringing in to their team the past few years, especially a lot of the guys that, you know, I really wanted and I've supported over the past few years. Like, first of all, Georgia dog Roquan Smith, veteran acquisition. But most importantly, let's talk draft wise, which is more of David Blackburn's expertise. They have Ben Cleveland from UGA, Kyle Hamilton from Atlanta, and Nate Wiggins even went to Westlake. You know what I'm saying? So I've been rooting for him since high school, and that's just to name a few. So I'm hoping he brings that eye for Georgia talent with him, if anything else. Because I don't know if y'all know, I've said this several times, y'all probably sick of hearing it, but Georgia is the state out of the entire country that produces the most NFL talent per capita capita per person out of the entire country. I think it's a solid strategy, honestly. That's why Nick Saban said a few years ago, Georgia high school football is the most competitive football in the entire nation. He never lied. Go look at the top recruiting class right now, the top recruits right now. Look at how many are from Georgia, and then also compare Georgia's population to everybody else, Texas, California, Florida. It's crazy. But now moving on, just in case if y'all are wondering too, a source confirmed that the Browns are expected to hire former Commanders Director of Pro Personnel Chris Polian. So that is who is leaving so that David Blackburn could come in. So again, just more purging of the Commanders front office from the Rivera era going to this Adam Peters era. I'm super excited. And just to let you know, really random, but you know Rich Manuel was always on it. Chris Polian now reunites with Andrew Berry. They were together in Indianapolis at one point and is now closer to his brother Brian, who was the AD at John Carroll University. I don't know how Rich Manuel does it, how he always finds these random facts, but I appreciate him, and I'm gonna always tell those to y'all and shout them out when I do it. Now let's move on to the Falcons guy that we got, and it's even crazier too, because while I was doing my research on the first two guys and I was about to get ready to record the video on those two first guys that we just talked about in Sosna and David, right before I could even get a chance to record the video, as soon as I'm getting ready, I turn my lights on and everything, I see that we went and made another big hire. Now I'm scared because I feel like now that I'm recording this, by the time I'm done recording, maybe we would have hired somebody else, but I don't know. And mind you, we have more, like we have other hires that we've made earlier this week as well. These are just the ones from today that I'm giving y'all in this video. Like all of these 3 hires that we're talking about in this video literally were just finalized today, Monday, May 20th. That's it. All 3 of these happened literally today. Also, another big hire in Washington. The Commanders have added Dwayne Jones as a national scout. Jones was most recently the assistant director of college scouting for the Falcons, but he's also served with the Ravens and the Saints, and he was with the Saints when they took Michael Thomas, and he was with the Ravens when they took Lamar Jackson. And just going back to like a little bit of who he is and where he comes from, there's like some background article that the Falcons did on him a little while back. They said most of the year, he travels across the country to see the nation's best college football talent up close, grade their skills, and analyze how they would fit in Atlanta. Now he's doing that for the Commanders. And the process is not an easy one. Evaluating players is subjective. There's no telling how a player will adapt to a different environment in a new system. Some skills in college are indicators that a player will be successful in the NFL, but like anything, it's not a perfect system. I like the fact that he knows that. Still, Jones has perfected his scouting process and become one of the best talent evaluators in the league. Jones has scouted and helped find players like Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, Malik Harrison, Chris Ivory, and others in previous stops with the Ravens and the New Orleans Saints. Jones's success has come from his unwavering confidence and willingness to embrace mistakes. It's a process he calls faith over fear. He said, quote, "You're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss on players. If you can accept that, that means you'll be great. Many people won't put themselves out there for fear of missing, but fear is what's going to separate you from the average. Be fearless. Don't worry about what people think and hold true to your convictions," unquote. I love that philosophy. I love that way of thinking. I'm a big fan of this hire just from that alone. Also, I'm just hoping he has nothing to do with a lot of the dumb decisions that the Falcons have made in the draft over the past few years. Because, at the end of the day, if Adam Peters likes him and felt like we should go steal him from the Falcons, then who am I to question Adam Peters? So I'm going to give Adam Peters and Dwayne Jones a big benefit of the doubt. We're going to have to see. I like what I'm hearing about him. But, again, the Falcons have not drafted very well, but maybe he didn't have anything to do with that. He gave them the best players, and the Falcons just chose to ignore his advice. I hope that's what happened. Also, I love how this scouting department is completely different than what it was just even a month ago going through the draft, less than a month ago. And y'all know I love addition by subtraction. I love getting better at the expense of another team getting worse. And y'all also know that I love to do it to them sorry little Falcons more than any other team in the NFL. So this may be my favorite move out of this entire video, just by the fact that we are making the Falcons even just a little bit worse, no matter how marginal. Petty forever over here. I wish them the worst. I'm your employee of the month Falcons hater over here, reporting for duty. I love it. Also, before we get up out of here, just to do like a quick little overview, review of everything that went down. Just to remind you, the Commanders have also had some other front office departures. Senior Director of Player Personnel Eric Stokes left, the guy that most people know him as the guy that said we need to take Emmanuel Forbes over Christian Gonzalez. Then you have National Scout David Whittington who left, College Scout Harrison Richard who left as well. We've had a lot of changes over just this past week. Everything we're talking about in this video just happened today. I already gave y'all a video a couple of days ago breaking down some other moves that have been made. Also, shouts out to Grant Paulson because I completely agree. Adam Peters is putting together a phenomenal front office. Night and day difference from the Snyder era to now, with Peters assembling a plethora of revered ascending stars, let's emphasize ascending stars, from around the league to round out his front office. Love it. Also, shouts out to Ben Standig for this because I completely agree with this as well. We'll see how the new look front office works over time. Still, imagine saying that at any point the last umpteen years that Washington would attract executives from the prior season's AFC and NFC #1 seeds, or from the NFC conference runner-up for significant roles. I mean, that is a great way to put it. That is phenomenal. The fact that we got Adam Peters, a couple of guys from the 49ers, coaches and front office, couple of guys from the Ravens, both #1 seeds in their divisions, and then the NFC conference runner-up from the Lions. We just took Sosna and Lance Newmark from them. I mean, yeah, I would have never have imagined. 3 years ago, you would have never have told me that we could still coaches and front office guys from the #1 seeds of respective divisions in one off season too. That's incredible. Also, shouts out to Al Galdi for this one. The Commanders with Adam Peters, Lance Newmark, Eugene Shin, Dave Gardy, and now Brandon Sosna and David Blackburn are building an absolute powerhouse of a front office. Outstanding to see. And just to let you know, we got General Manager Adam Peters, Assistant General Manager Lance Newmark, Senior VP of Football Operations Brandon Sosna, Senior VP of Football Strategy Eugene Shin, Senior VP of Football Initiatives coming directly from the NFL front office itself, David Gardy, and Director of Player Personnel David Blackburn. Those are your top most notable guys. Don't forget my boy Tim McGrath, who is now leading our whole health and recovery department, our exercise science and all of that type of stuff, man. So don't forget about that one too. Do not sleep on my boy there. Also, shouts out to Craig Hoffman for pointing this out as well. Sosna adding to what has already been one of the most academically credentialed front offices in the entire NFL, because Sosna is a University of Penn graduate, great school there. Dave Gardy is from Brown. Rogers from Howard, even though he's about to potentially leave. Eugene Shin, MIT, and even Martin Mayhew, Georgetown Law. I mean, we got some guys up there. We got some geniuses. Also, shouts out to Resh Manuel for pointing this out. With the exception of keeping Mayhew, Peters is building a front office of people he may not even actually have directly worked with before. Quinn is largely actually doing the same with the coaching side. We only brought a couple of coaches from the Cowboy side of things. So that has been rare to see in Washington. Fascinated to see how this plays out. But I do want to emphasize the fact that there is no bias here. We're not hiring friends anymore. Ron Rivera was hiring a bunch of friends. Dan Snyder would hire friends. We even drafted friends, but we're not going to go back into that one right now. The only factor that this Commanders regime cares about right now is, are you the best at what you do? Or at the very least, one of the best at what you do. That's it. That's literally it. We don't care how any previous connection to you. I mean, maybe it'll help a little bit, but that's not the main thing that we're looking for. Are you the best at what you do? Say less, you're hired, keep it pushing. And I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Harris is out there also handing out big money as well. He has to be, because we talk about how the Commanders have the most roster turnover in the NFL going from 2023 to 2024 out of the entire NFL. And also how this 2024 Commanders roster turnover is the most dramatic since World War II. Like we just keep focusing on the roster, but don't forget, man, people forget to mention that we have an entirely new coaching staff and front office as well. And the only coaches here from last year are our quarterbacks coach, our wide receivers coach, and even Ryan Kerrigan. He's still here, but he has a completely different title and role from what he had last year. And then they had to wait until after the draft to do it. But now almost our entire front office is new as well, especially the scouting department. No bias here. Who's the best at what they do? Bring him in. I don't care about anything else after that. It's also crazy too, because the last time the Burgundy and Gold won a playoff game, I was in elementary school. I couldn't even enjoy it as much as I would now. Like, can I please get some playoff wins that I can actually watch enjoy and actually feel, like be able to actually calculate how amazing it is. I was so young the last time we won a playoff game. I don't even remember it. I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head who played in the game, what happened in that game. I was too little. And I'm very optimistic about our near future because it starts with the top. And you can argue that we have the best front office in the NFL on paper, at least on paper. We got to see what it actually ends up being. And it's hard to really grade a front office until years down the line after they have a few drafts, a few free agencies. We see some contracts building from Sauce's side and things like that. But it looks like on paper, because the Panthers, they put together an elite coaching staff on paper, but then they went out there and had a bad draft and nobody said their front office was great. And then their whole thing went crumbling down. They look like one of the worst teams in the NFL. Not only do we have one of the best coaching staffs on paper, but most importantly, we have arguably the best front office on paper as well. And then we proceeded to kill free agency in the draft. Those are steps that the Panthers missed last year with their elite coaching staff that they had on paper. It can't just be that one thing. The Panthers only had one thing on paper going for them. The Commanders have at least 4 or 5. So I think there's a big difference there. But again, I do want to emphasize the fact that this is all on paper. We got to wait to see. But man, again, we're looking like the Avengers. We are getting guys that are elite at their respective areas of expertise and assembling them all here with one common goal: make the Commanders Super Bowl contenders and winners, and make sure we have some long-term success. And I agree with @JDanielsMVP when he said on Twitter to finish out the video, quote, "Obviously, we don't know how the product on the field will turn out, but at least we will be competitive and accountability will be held," unquote. I completely agree. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm that subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get a notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Let me know, are you just as excited as I am about these front office hires, or are you the type of person that's like, I gotta see it, or are you just the type of person that doesn't really get excited about front office hires and coaching hires? You only really care about the players. Let me know how you feel about anything, if you agree or disagree with any of my points, if I'm overly excited, if I'm not excited enough, if I feel like if I missed any points any points of reference as to how these guys are even better than what I talked about in this video. Let me know that. Let me know how you feel about everything, about how Adam Peters is completely cleaning house, and the fact that even though Rob Rogers was doing a good job, he's still not being complacent, not being lazy, not accepting I or good, wanting elite at every possible point in the Commanders organization. Let me know how you feel about all of that and more. I'm gonna try my best to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible. I was able to get to a lot of them in the last video. I'm gonna try to do the same with this video and moving forward, and maybe if I have time, I'll try to go back to older videos to try to see. Again, like I always tell y'all, man, I do not mind y'all repeating the same comment or question in more videos until I see it. That does not bother me at all. So if there's anything you really want me to see or answer, if you have a question, if you have any type of comment, make sure you just say it in multiple videos until I see it, because that doesn't bother me. And I've just been so busy working on all these videos, I don't get a chance to see every comment. So I really appreciate y'all patience, and make sure y'all stay tuned because so much content on the way. I'm still coming with draft content. I got y'all covered with the practice updates. They practice again tomorrow, so I'm gonna hit y'all with that tomorrow, all of that type of stuff. So I really appreciate y'all. I'm still working on my whole schedule prediction breakdown and everything, so stay tuned for that as well. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.